Welcome, guys. Once again, episode 7 of Tech 43. Hopefully, we can cover some stuff in our roundtable that would help you guys find some tech that's for you. And I'm working on this beginning. It's getting better. Brian gives me a hard time about it, but we'll get there. It's fine. We have a couple experts in the field here. Eddie, can you say hi?
Hello there. How are you guys?
And Brian?
Hi, Eddie.
That's going to be his thing.
Yeah,
So basically, this episode is for me to troll Eddie on the fact that the Pixel Ultra didn't happen. But we are going to talk a little bit about the Google keynote and our thoughts on it, what we thought we saw, what we didn't see, the 5 minutes that it actually took to actually do it, some of the specs on the new phones, and some of the other products that were announced and our thoughts on those. What I think is kind of cool, we're going to go over some comparisons from current flagships that are out now compared to what the Pixel and Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL are looking like, and who those types of devices are for in this market right now. And then Brian wants to talk a little about the Razer phone, which if you're just an average consumer may not actually know about. So that'll be kind of cool to let him riff on that a little bit because he's pretty excited about some of the features of that.
Yep. Kind of a niche product. Pretty exciting though.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff involved with that. So if we can tell you guys a little bit about it and get you guys excited, I mean that's part of get as geeked out as he is right now, then it's a win. So just to kick it off, overall, the event itself was fairly low key from what I saw. I mean, it was a different venue this year than what they had been having it in, I guess if I'm using full English, but it was choppy to me. It was odd. I mean, Eddie, in general, you've watched all of these. What was your opinion on the keynote itself?
It was it was very informative. You know, it was very to the beat. You could tell that they were excited about the features and the products, but you can tell that they typically deliver keynotes to like developers, like the developer. Google I/O is like where they shine because they talk to somebody. They're not using market speak to talk to a consumer. They're talking to actual developers. So when you're sitting at Google I/O and they're talking to you in such a way where it's not like, I don't want to say talk down, but
Google I/O is basically their software.
Right. Their software for developers where they introduce the APIs and the things that are coming into the next versions of Android and Chrome. The Google hardware event is similar to what Apple does, but the problem is I don't know that anyone can match what Apple does as far as their presentation goes. So when Apple talks to a consumer through these keynotes, they're assuming that, you know, potential customers are going to be purchasing as opposed to developers. So, you know, Google has their developers. That's where they shine. And this is like, it would be like the first time unpracticed that Apple would have given it. Like if everybody was like, okay, we're giving a keynote with no practice. That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, there was a couple of spots that were cringeworthy with the poor people with that did the announcement for the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3 XL were rough. Like they was just like hit or miss, like misspeak. What month are we in, or whatever the situation was.
They didn't make enough jokes about it. That should have been the best. That was the best opportunity to make some killer jokes about all of the things that happened, and they ignored it to the extent where even the marketing materials up on the screen, like when you first watched that, if you watched that Pixel introduction, it took a while before you determined whether there was a notch or not. Just by
those angles,
always the back of the phone, always like a sweeping like view like this where you couldn't see the notch part. And I was just like, does it have one or not? Like everybody was staring, but they definitely don't have the polish that Apple does when they're speaking at a hardware event that is designed for consumers, and it shows for sure.
I guess it's tough to they can't meet the consumer in the middle as far as like presenting hardware. I mean, it's really they're in their infancy as far as the hardware aspect goes. As far as top end hardware goes. So it can't expect them to have it perfected when Apple's been doing this for as far as the phones go for 11 years.
The thing I would have expected them to be up on was the fact that if you were watching that near any of your Google devices, every single time they said the Google hot word, not only would it go off, but like it would start reading something to the extent of what they were doing. It was just every single time. Like, I know Amazon has mastered this. When you see an Amazon commercial, they have it set so that it understands that it's a commercial. So it doesn't do that. It blows my mind that happened. I mean, it just didn't, it happened like epic. It was just nonstop. It would stop the stream. Like if you were watching it on a Chromecast, it would literally just stop the stream to do something else. It was insane.
There was also a thing about like they were getting a little bit of slack just presentation quality wise because they were trying to do a live demo of like the hub, and like it wasn't good. It wasn't responding in a decent amount of time for it to actually be fluid. So they were catching a little bit of flack for that after the fact. And I saw some kind of responses or some reactions to the event itself. They were like, well, that's why you don't do live like interactions with Google Assistant, because it's probably not going to work the way you need to. Kind of like when you try Face ID at an event and it like fails and people are like, oh, that's terrible. Brian, I know you said you only watched a certain portion of it. So I mean,
I watched where they were talking about the camera, obviously, and the home hub, and so I saw that choppiness with the home hub, and so I wasn't sure if it was just like I don't know. There was a lot of delay there, but they are, and I think we discussed this before. I feel like they're just kind of ride on that roller coaster of all the free advertising they had beforehand, before the launch, and then just let that wave, help with sales at this point.
It was real odd that they played that video. I think they tweeted out the little skit snippet of all the YouTubers talking about how the Pixel 3 has been leaked and we know everything about it. And then they addressed nothing about it. Like they didn't touch on it. They didn't joke about it. Like Eddie said, there wasn't anything. So it was like, what's the point? Like we're just sitting here so the question is there a long game? Is there something after this that's going to happen? Because I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not trying to throw it back in your head here.
Pixel watches.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was so bizarre that they didn't talk about the reference. They didn't even reference the video. Like they didn't make a joke. Like there was nothing.
It played and then they just continued.
It is pretend like if it didn't play, it would have not made a difference. Like there was no, like it made me more confused because I couldn't tie back to it. There was no part of that presentation that I could tie back to that little snippet that they had there. So I don't understand whether it was they intended to do something and last minute they pulled it. But if that was the case, it would have had to been last minute because they could have just skipped that. It was right at the beginning. It wasn't like it was like in the middle of a presentation or they had it all set up. Like they could have just skipped it. So I have no idea what they were thinking.
I mean, it was just odd, but it was different. It was a different type of situation. Obviously, it's not Apple doing this, and like I said, Google for a top end hardware is in its infancy, in my opinion, as far as this goes. So obviously, they're learning. They're seeing the hiccups along the way.
I mean, when you look back on some of like the first iPhone launches, they were a little awkward, and like the first iPhone. If you watch that one, and I watched that maybe 2 months ago, and was like, man, this is like really awkward and uncomfortable because they were like phone, iPod, internet, something like that, and they just kept repeating it. And then they made the crowd repeat it in a creepy way and then revealed the phone. So, I mean, yeah, this is what, number 3. So hopefully they'll get that.
I think I watched a video on like Apple's events and why they're popular and why people watch them basically. And like, there was a bunch of stuff about how Steve Jobs would make make jokes and comments and things and interact basically, which makes sense maybe. And obviously, like Brian said, that's probably learned along the way. But you could tell why. And I'm not giving them a hard time at all. It was just basically a reaction to what we actually saw. Could have been put together a little bit better, but as far as the actual devices go, so we got 3 products. We got the Hub, the Pixel Slate, and the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3 XL. If we're talking about the phones, we're talking about a smaller Pixel 3 with a 5.5-inch display, 2915 milliamp hour battery, $799. Is that where you thought it was going to land?
Yep, I did.
Is that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, like me. 6.3-inch Pixel 3 XL, $899, and 3430 milliamp hour battery. I guess that's we knew what it was. At least they said how many milliamps there are in the battery. I mean, that we went through the whole Apple thing. We still don't know how many milliamps are in the battery. The notch exists. Like Eddie said, eventually through the pictures that they showed on the screen, you saw the notch, and then they had the little tray lift up in front of everybody and saw all that. A lot of the talk was software related. I don't think they mentioned specs at all. I looked these specs up.
Not one.
They didn't say a number
on the phones. Yeah, on the phones there was none.
Right. So I mean, we'll go through some of the software stuff. Speaking of software, as of now, there is a feature in developer options of the new devices or the new Pixel 3 XL to remove the notch, or at least lower the notification bar down.
There's 4 of them.
Okay.
One of them makes a notch on the bottom that matches it. I'm not kidding. It's true. It's called symmetry, and it makes a notch at the bottom and the top that
it's called exactly trolling the hell out of people.
Unbelievably awesome in any way. It's truly awesome. Then there is there's one that kind of curves the one side, then it curves the other side, and then there's a straight bar across the top. If you're gonna do that, you got to do the one with the notch at the bottom.
That's too much. I can't believe that.
Minus the troll, I saw at least a few people that did the removing of the notch and lowered that. Have you looked at it yourself, Eddie?
Yeah, it just puts the time and the notifications up in the top. It's very reminiscent of like LG's V series, like the older ones, like the V10 and the V20, where they had a secondary display at the top. Having been looking at it for 3 days now, it's not as bad as I thought. Like when you obsess over it in pictures, like when you're looking at pictures, that's what you focus on. You look at that aspect. It's like having a giant pimple right here, and you're just like, and all focus is there, and you don't have, like, no one sees who you are inside. They just see your pimple. Same thing with the Pixel. It's once you're holding it and you're using it, the notch is just there, but you just ignore it. Like it's not nearly as bad when you're using the phone as opposed to when you're looking at pictures, and there's no experience there. So, and much like not talking about the actual hardware itself, really, it's all about that software experience. And when you start using it, you can tell, like, that's it. It just, the notch fades away and you're just using the phone. So I would be surprised if many people took the time to go into developer options and change that.
I don't know how many actual people know that there's developer options that you can find. And because, I mean, there's talking about animation scale and things like that that are in there, that if you mess with them enough, you can jack your device up fairly well. So I don't know how many people actually mess with it, but from what I've heard, and it's everything that you're saying, and anybody that's had any time with this device, is the actual use of it. Like, you only really notice, like, when it's on the home screen, you get it's in your face. But when you're using it in applications or anything like that, it's either it fades in fairly well. Like, it's not something that sticks out per se. I still think I like the smaller one anyways. From what everybody seems to think, it's like super, I don't know, it's pocketable is a word too, but one-handed use, like super just comfortable to use in general. And I think somebody even said it. It's basically the same footprint as the Pixel 2 XL, but with, or the Pixel 2, the original Pixel 2, but with a larger display, like a same sized chassis, or is it actually bigger?
It's just different shaped. The Pixel 3 XL and the Pixel 2 XL are a more worthy comparison because side by side they're like identical. Mm-hmm. It's slightly different shaped, the two, between the 2 and the 3, and I would say it feels more like a S9, like a Galaxy S9, than it does anything else. Like there's a more drastic, different feeling in the 3 than there is in the 3 XL. Like if you had a 2 XL, it feels like almost the same phone, just has a slightly nicer feel. If you had a 2 and you moved to a 3, it would feel like you were moving to a different phone.
That's good. That's at least for someone that hasn't got to pick it up.
Well, they started doing that new etching on the back too. So the back is glass, but has that like textury feeling to it, I guess, is what people are saying.
It's like frosted. It's like a frosty. Yeah.
So I think that's a useful thing too, because the 2 XL is like, it's like holding onto a fish sometimes if you don't have it in a case. So
can you do that fish thing for me again one time? Okay, there you go. Thank you.
That's how that works, by the way.
So in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to purchase these devices based on the fact that you didn't hear about specs, you didn't really hear about any of that sort of stuff, you're going to purchase this based on some of the software updates and some of the features that they're going to be adding to these. So in that vein, we were just talking about before we started here, some of the extra things that they're introducing that they spent all the time on during the keynote. I don't remember what the actual name of this feature is, but the call screening option. Eddie, you've I think tried it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't wait for spam callers. When I got them that day, I was like, wait, just call me. I'm gonna get a new phone soon. I need you to call me back tomorrow. Like, just call me back tomorrow. And then I'm excited, like every chance I get to get a spam caller to call me, because it's the greatest feature of all. You're presented with a third option whenever you want to either answer a call, decline a call, or screen call. And then the assistant talks on the other end to that particular person calling. And then you get a real-time translation or transcription of it. But below that are different options. Like it's almost like a conversation tree that you can tell the assistant how you want it to proceed with the conversation. So if they're saying, like, talking in circles about things, you can say, oh, tell me a little bit more about this, or not really sure who this is. Like there's like 4 or 5 different options that you can pick, and then the assistant will change its tone and talk based on those options that you pick. And then ultimately you can have the assistant to schedule a callback. You can have it tell you to take you off of the calling list and never call again, or you can actually have the assistant take the call, in which case it'll say, hey, please hold on, I'm getting this person for you now, and then it picks up on your end and the call comes through. So it's super cool. It's very fluid. It works extremely well.
That's like next level stuff. I mean, I think was it IO where they were talking about how Google Assistant can make it like an appointment for you and things like that. So
that comes next.
Right. Yeah, okay. So it's a stepping stone type of thing here. So that's kind of cool. I think I think this goes along with that, but also too with a lot of the camera functionality was the AI built in. As far as the AI and the visual core that they use in the camera to have some of these new features. Night sight, which was a new feature as far as the low light performance of the camera.
And those shots looked great.
One thing, they did look great. The one thing is that iPhone example cannot be real. It was booty beyond booty. Like, that cannot be a real picture.
I actually don't know. Like,
It's an iPhone 4. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, they said it was a 10s.
Yeah.
So what I looked for over the past couple of days was, since I didn't have access to a 10s and similar lighting conditions to try it for myself, what I thought was soon as that came out, that a bunch of people, Apple fans, were going to go and take pictures like it and say, yeah, okay, Google, but nobody did, which leads me to believe that they went and took them and they're like, oh crap, it really does look like that. Because
it was just so bad. It was just so terrible. And all you hear about is how good these Apple cameras are.
But from Apple.
I mean, even reviewers, which obviously can be semi-partial to a company that they want early access to their devices for. I get that. But I mean, it was just like, yeah, these cameras are this, and this, and low light. And although I think Google tends to get the low light crown for the most part, but it was tough. So, I mean, the night mode was cool. That comparison was, and Brian's right, it was night and day. The picture was like the most awesome. And low light's super tough. Does really well with shadows. But you're looking at 12.2 megapixel rear camera, 8 megapixel front facing with a 19 millimeter ultra wide, which was one of the other features that they're pushing, which I think is actually more relevant to the average consumer, which is that extra wide selfie taken, like group selfie, if you will. So
I remember having that on because I had a V10 for a hot second, and that had that dual. I can't remember if it was dual or if it was just one. But either way, it had a wide angle lens for selfies, and that was actually super great. And so, now that you don't have every phone I've had since then hasn't had it, it does make a difference. So given the prevalence of not asking people to take photos for you anymore.
Just the examples that they were looking at, they said it was 184% more of the scene you're catching. I agree with Brian. Like, I think that feature speaks to more people than some of the other stuff that we're talking about. I mean, there's people that want to fit. They're not carrying around the selfie stick isn't really a thing anymore, but you just are an outcast if you own one, or if you're seen in public with one. But that
it's
fits.
Okay. It's okay to admit it, Mark.
Yeah, I carry one around with me. Just taking pictures everywhere I go with all of my friends. But that was probably of the features, I thought that was one of the most far-reaching as far as the benefit of that to most people. Although, like, there was Top Shot, which was Eddie may be able to explain this a little bit better, but basically the artificial intelligence picking the best part. Like, the camera takes the picture, but she takes multiple pictures and then kind of picks the best features of each photo out and combines.
Sort of. So it's a variation of the live picture that it does now. So if you take a picture on a Pixel and you view it on a Pixel, you'll see that there's like a 3-second little video clip that plays. And it's part of that picture that you took. So it will adjust. It essentially is calling back to that little clip, and it gives you, like, it's using the AI to pull the best picture out of that clip. What they don't tell you is that when you hit the shutter, you get your high resolution photo. That video clip is actually a lower resolution. So if you were to pick a top shot that was not the one you took, you actually get a significantly lower resolution picture out of the top shot. And they don't really say that anywhere, but it's based on those clips that it has been doing for a long time. It would be the equivalent of, but it can't capture that entire thing in high resolution. So the picture you take is high resolution, but if you go to the top shot, you actually lower your resolution in favor of getting a better picture. So, but they didn't mention it anywhere. And I did find that after taking a look, and if you save a top shot photo, you can see that the resolution has changed.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
I don't know if that's a deal breaker necessarily. I mean, if you look at the medium that most people are viewing photos through, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, you know what I mean? Like those platforms in and of themselves don't necessarily lend to be high resolution, and you're applying so many filters half the time anyway that you're losing anything that you had to begin with. So I don't think the average person is gonna care about that too much, but that's interesting to know that it drops it like that. Because if you are gonna blow a photo up or print it, go for a high quality print, then yeah, that could be a serious flaw, I guess, in your plan.
Well, I know because they position that camera on that phone is, I mean, in the event, they were like, yeah, we have these photographers using this phone for actual like magazine covers and things like that. So that's a professional photo.
You can shoot in RAW. You lose some of the features, of course, when you shoot in RAW, but you can certainly shoot in RAW. But at that point, when you're taking a picture for a magazine cover, you're not using Top Shot. You've already meticulously designed the scene. So,
yeah, well, there you go. Sorry. That is partially, and then I guess if it skips into the super res zoom that they talked about, where you can zoom in, is it after the fact without losing quality of the photo?
Yeah, they're using AI to fill in the gaps of things that they know. It knows what certain hair looks like. It knows what trees look like or what buildings look like. So when you zoom in, it's just replacing those details, sort of extrapolating out of what it knows about the picture and what it knows about the world and building it together into one.
Man, I really hope there's going to be some really funny screw ups with that. Zoom in on a tree and out of nowhere a bird just changes it into an eagle. I could see that happening at some point. Like Google AI is just like, you know what? I drank too much last night and this is what we're gonna do. Everything is eagles today.
APIs have gone wild. That wasn't. I mean, anything that can save image quality or enhance image quality is productive, especially with a camera that's supposed to be and is billed as top notch in the space. That's supposed to be the best. So photo booth mode, which is basically, I think, just being able for the camera to notice that you're smiling and then take the photo without having to hit the shutter button.
Yeah, it's the same software they use in the Google Clips, the little cameras that you put all over the place that are supposed to catch events. They just transferred that technology to the camera lens in the phone. So
there you go. Also, I think that I heard that the screens are really nice. Eddie's kind of been able to look at it. I don't think they have as big of a blue shift issue from what I understand, and you're not really seeing a color.
It's the same. It's remarkably similar to the iPhone panel. And I know that Samsung isn't making the new iPhone panel, so I would assume that some of those are LG panels like the Pixels, because they have the same blue shift at the exact same moment. So if you take a 10S and you take a Pixel 3 XL and then you turn them, they shift blue at exactly the same time. So I would be surprised if it wasn't LG that manufactured a lot of those 10S panels. But it's not bad. I mean, it's a really nice looking, much nicer looking than the phones before it. Probably the best Google phone display that there's ever been. And it's not super duper bright. So it's hard to say, but again, it just feels a little duller than, it feels more natural. I shouldn't say dull. It feels very natural. But so did the Pixel did that originally. And then after they got enough people complaining, they added a mode with a software update that let you like boost the colors. So I'd imagine that's something similar may happen if they feel like it's too like normal. It's just like it's like nothing. They didn't go out of their way to make colors pop. It just kind of looks like real life.
I mean, I noticed that between my 2XL and my wife just got a Z2 Play. I mean, the Z2 Play has a much sharper, poppier colors than my phone does for sure. But mine does look more natural, just even with taking pictures. it's like mine looks like what I'm actually looking at, and hers, the colors are a little more saturated, I think, than anything else.
I guess that's kind of crazy to see because I know there's a vast difference price point wise between those two devices.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, well, what do you prefer?
I don't have mine on. Mine isn't on the. I keep mine on auto brightness. I don't crank the brightness, Eddie. I'm pretty sure you still do that, right? It's like
burn his
looking at
retinas.
the freaking sun when you look at Eddie's phone. But
And he judges everyone that does.
I keep mine on auto, and I don't do like the color saturation mode that they have or whatever. I can't remember what it's called. The thing where you can boost the color on it, so it does look more natural, for sure.
It was just interesting because like I know that there's a major price difference between that Z2 Play and your phone and the Pixel 2 XL. So it's like, okay, what's coming out of that camera? What are you looking at every day on that display? And because is it a 1080 display on that Z2 Play?
It might be 720p.
Yeah, I know it was low end.
It's an HD display, but I don't know if it goes up to 1080p.
But I mean, it's interesting to get a idea of what that sort of comparison is, considering it's two totally different demographics of what you're using that for. So we have the phone in just black, clearly white, and not pink, which is basically what, sand-ish, or like it's
pink
salmon.
It's not pink. It's not pink.
Yeah, salmon.
It's definitely pink. It's a pastel pink.
When I saw you put this on the list of things, I was like, we're gonna have the exact conversation that the people who came up with this color are, where it's pink. No, it's not pink. Yes, it is pink. Well, it's more of a sand or salmon. That's exactly how I imagined
it was
when they came up with that color. So, and then they settled on, you know what? Not pink sounds like the most clearly white or just black name, or
it's
kind of
100% the iPhone R naming process was.
I don't.
We didn't have a name 10 minutes before we needed to walk up on stage.
I don't think they thought that name through because it's the most confusing. It makes it confusing to purchase if you are the person who is purchasing for someone else. So I've had folks that are looking to buy the phone, and they're on the phone. They're like, well, what color do you want? Not pink. Okay. And then they get the not pink, and then they're like, I didn't want pink. I said not pink. Yeah. So like, but there's a whole variation of that whenever. And so somebody's like, so what color would you like? I'd like white, not pink. So are you saying are you saying that not pink is the color you want?
Because that's what it's called.
Because that's what it's called.
Sass.
Maybe that's just their way to try to drive the sales of that particular color of phone.
From what I thought it was popular online. I thought a lot of people were.
It looks nice.
It is nice. I can't disagree.
The white is arguably the sharpest looking color, but the not pink color is very, very nice looking as far as just whenever it's paired with one of the Google cases, like it does look very nice.
That's good. Yeah, I figured why not bring it up because Brian's going to want to talk about it.
Is it pink? Is it not pink?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have in our show notes here the words Pixel Ultra, and then I have a bunch of dots after it. That's for you, Eddie. You're welcome. That doesn't exist as of yet. That is not a thing. They didn't reference it. They didn't say why. And we talked about earlier why we have a video saying, you think you know? We freaking knew. Like, it happened. Everything we thought happened. Everything you were talking smack about didn't. So it's over until they try to release something else. Eddie can take his tinfoil hat off. But there were other devices that were announced in this same event. The Google Hub. Am I saying it wrong? I can't even remember.
Home Hub.
Home Hub. Basically a 6-inch display attached to a Google Home that doesn't have a camera. They already have enough of your personal information. They don't need to see inside your house.
They already know what I look like. They tell me every time someone takes a picture of me.
Yes. It comes in 1,500 colors. There's like 4 or 5 colors, I think. I like the idea. Part of me wants to get one to put in my kitchen because it's like one of those things where they're positioning it as, oh, you're trying to cook. ask it to a video about a video on YouTube or whatever else it would be. They push the whole home control through a certain dock or control panel on that device, which I thought was kind of cool, considering I know Eddie has a bunch of different types of smart home tech that, if tied together instead of having individual apps to change the settings in, would be clutch. I like that idea. I like the fact that it probably looks a lot better on your kitchen counter than an actual. I have a Google Home Mini on the kitchen counter because they fall from the sky for free 93. And I thought it was a cool idea. I don't know what your guys' thoughts were on the Home Hub.
It's JBL had either just came out with, or it's been out for a little while, had something very similar that's already in existence. I want to say that doesn't have a camera either.
It does.
It does have a camera.
It does. Yeah, there is one that does. I don't know if it's, but I'll get into it later. They're actually two completely separate devices, believe it or not, the JBL and the Google Home Hub. But if I want you to I want to hear the rest of your thoughts so that I can.
So yeah, what I was going to say on it is, JBL has come out with that and is positioned it as more of a media device, right? So I think this concept of having it as, this is and it's right in the name, this is the hub for your home control, makes a lot of sense from the Google perspective and the way that they're positioning their smart home products. The colors are neat. I spent some time watching that and looking at the different colors that it came in. And so their whole point was, oh, well, this will fit in with anybody's decor. And I can see where they're kind of right. Comes in white, the gray, I want to say a pink color. Coral. And then there's a fourth one, green.
Not it's like a mint. It's mint. Like a mint color.
Comes in not green.
It was like a mint color, yeah.
Not mint?
Not
mint. Anyway, so I mean, they're trying to make it be something that people would think would be, that would really stand out. They're trying to make it blend in with your house just so that way you're not freaked out by having something that's listening to you all the time. I mean, the tiny little discs, you're like, oh, whatever, those aren't, that's nothing to worry about. But now you have a monitor in there and they're like, but wait, it doesn't have a camera, so everything's good.
That's how it felt when we were like, yeah, there's a display here, but we're not looking at you.
Well, when they showed it, they showed it in a kitchen, and then they showed it on someone's nightstand with someone sleeping, and then that's when they said there's no camera. So so I was like, well, that's very well timed. And they were like, it doesn't have a camera, so that way you don't have to worry about private moments or something like that. And I was like, all right, I see where you're going with this. But it's
10 years old. I'm just laughing at that.
Right, exactly. Everybody want another hand. But yeah, I mean the concept is great, and hopefully the actual execution is great as well. The little bit of lag that we saw there is concerning, but who knows? Maybe their internet was running slow that day.
Well, it doesn't run the home software that like the JBL does. It's like an actual other product. So that home device has a forked version of the Chromecast software on it.
The hub?
So the hub. So the hub does not run the Google Home, oh my goodness, I'm blanking out on what it's called now. It's like the Android Things. So the Android Things software that they put on like the smart displays, like the JBL, the Lenovo's, this one runs a forked version of the Chromecast software. It's not quite a Chromecast and it's not quite a Google Home. And that, to my understanding, is that software wasn't completely finished yet, which is why you got the look of that the way that it was.
Because we're not going to see this product for a minute, from what I understand.
It's still coming. I think
Christmas.
It's up for pre-order.
It's supposed to. Yeah, it's up for pre-order, but I think it's the week after next. It's slated in stores. So it's not too far from now, but close enough that it's concerning that it was operating in such a fashion. But I thought about that camera thing, and I think more or less that maybe they're testing the waters to not step on the toes of all the other manufacturers making smart displays for them, because in essence, when you put your Pixel 3 on the Pixel stand, which they pushed heavily, it ultimately becomes that home hub with a camera.
Which
and it's on your nightstand
is
sure.
a wireless charging dock for
Right.
the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3 XL.
So it becomes that device with a camera. So it's got to be, there's got to be something else there, because that maybe that's going to become something else, or they're testing somehow. But it came when I realized that the Home Hub didn't run the same software as the JBL, because like the JBL you can do duo calls on, and that I find very useful. It's put up in a place for me which I can, make a quick telephone call and I can walk around and do things and see. I think that that's a valid argument for purchasing one of those devices, is the fact that the video calling is one of the reasons I've looked at it. Like one of the reasons I bought it was the video calling aspect of it. So I feel like they have some other motives behind the Home Hub. Not quite sure what they are yet, but it's definitely something that's maybe not obvious right now, just based on the software that they're developing for it. Because a lot of the stuff that's on the Home now is coming to those other smart displays. It's just that it's taken them a little longer because they're building it into the Android Things software, and they're not using that Chromecast, that weird Frankenstein Chromecast software that they're using for the Home Hub. So
I thought it was a decent idea. I mean, what type of person does this product fall into, as far as why would we want this product? Like, what are we going to use it for? Is it going to sit on our kitchen countertop and be a Google Home with a display?
I mean, I think that's one great use for it, for sure. I mean, how often do you find yourself, at least me, I'm trying to cook something and I can't remember the steps of what I literally just read 4 seconds ago. So I'm like, let me pick up my phone again. Let me do that, and back and forth. And so, I mean, that's a great use for it, for sure. Hands down, right in the kitchen.
They did talk about that. That was kind of like one of the things that they were talking about. When I saw it, I instantly was like, okay, this is going to look kind of cool in the kitchen countertop, just because it's more functional for that space, or it just looks better, I guess. But $149, I don't think was that crazy of a price point. Mm-hmm. What's that JBL run?
$249.
Okay. But it does have a camera.
It has a camera, things like, but it has a giant. The speakers are significant. The speakers on the Home are not very loud, and they're rear facing, which is, if you put the Home Hub like in a corner in the kitchen, the sound's actually bouncing off whatever's behind it, and then coming back at you. It looked like there was a speaker maybe in the front that I can't hear anything from it. And then I thought, well, maybe it's using the same technology that the Google Max does, where it figures out where it's at in the room and then adjusts the speakers. But maybe at $149, I don't know that it's going to do that.
Yeah, because the Google Home Max was like $900 million. Was it $299?
$299 or $399?
$399.
Yeah, $9 million. And it needs its own like cabinet because it's friggin' huge. But I was just curious, like what niche, what demographic does this product serve? Where does it land? But
well, I think cool. Like you said, with the prevalence of Google Home Minis, as you said, priced at what, free
most of the time.
Free
if you take a shower. Free when you.
Yeah. So I mean, you have people that have these in their home now. They're like, okay, this thing's pretty cool. Or they're like, well, I wish when I asked it the weather, it would show me, the weather instead of just telling you, because some people are more visual than others, and so I think you're going to hit that market right there, and that's a good price point for it, because you're yeah, you paid nothing for your Google Home Mini, and you probably somehow got the regular Google Home at 50% off, because that's just what they did too. You buy 2 Google Home Minis, you got that for free, one or the other. So that's a good price point, I think. And it's a good way to kind of introduce that smart home technology into people's lives that don't necessarily have it.
I like the hub aspect, the software implementation of controlling everything from a dock. That piece of it was probably the biggest thing for me when I have multiple things. Like I'm in the Hue app for my lights. If I'm not asking the home stuff, you're going to be in your Nest app for your camera and your thermostat and all those things. So if you can bring it all together, I think a localized central hub would make sense. And I think the name kind of speaks for itself and what it's trying to do. I think it seemed like that was the direction they were taking that, which for me makes more sense than, what you said, Brian, is probably more likely to be the case. It's people are going to grab it for those reasons first. And then when they acquire those other things, that's when they're going to realize that it's more productive than having 16 apps on their phone to control their house.
Right. Because I think when these products initially launched, people were like, what do I do with this? Even with, Alexa, you could order stuff through. So that's cool. But other than that, people were using them to play music. And so, once you start getting people used to, well, now I can control my thermostat and my lights and my garage door and everything, every other aspect of that. And then add stuff to a shopping list and manage other parts of your life as opposed to what music you're going to listen to next. This is another stepping stone for that.
Yeah, I like that direction. I think that's where we're going to see the most functionality. Why someone purchases it could be any of these reasons we've said, but I think it's going to produce those types of things for the people that do buy it and do adopt it. Also, the Pixel Slate, which would you consider it's convertible? No, it's a tablet, Eddie. It's a Chrome OS tablet.
Yep.
You can have the floor, sir.
I'm gonna bow Eddie on this one.
Go ahead. Tell us a little bit more about the Pixel Slate.
So
I'm going to mute my mic so you don't.
It's essentially a Chrome OS tablet, which is maybe the first, to my knowledge, that doesn't have any like keyboard or anything attached to it. It's a legit tablet, unbelievably high resolution for the size, super bright, super powerful. I guess we'll get to that in a second with the processors, but it almost seems like waving the white flag to Apple's iPad, saying that, we're not going to beat you with Android tablets. So we're going to crush you with Chrome OS based tablets with all of the things that are coming. Cause you can run Linux on it. Google's got that new streaming service where you can stream PC games, to it. So it will be very interesting to see what happens with these devices, whether they are an actual competitor to Apple's iPad or if they just can't find a home. But they're expensive. They are, I think, $599 for the Celeron based version, and it goes to $800 or $899 for the M3, $1,000 or $1,200 for the i5, and then $1,600 for the i7. So that is there's a lot of really nice laptops you can buy for $1,600.
You can buy a MacBook for that, which is insane to me. So you went through the specs. We realized it can be spec'd up to any sort of certain point. So you're a Pixelbook user. Why should someone purchase this device? Whether it be, is it someone coming from an iPad? Is it someone coming from doesn't want to buy a laptop, so they're going to buy the $599 one? Who is this for?
I don't know.
Great answer. Great.
I have no idea who this is for because it's priced odd. If you knocked because that's not including anything but the tablet. The keyboard is another $200 on top of that, and the pen is another $100 on top of that. So you've got to add $300 to whatever.
It's an Apple thing to do.
Whatever you're looking at. So you look at the base configuration, and you're pushing $1,000 almost. and then you're well over 1,000 with every model over that. So I've used Pixelbooks. I love Chrome OS. It really is a great device and operating system for like no worries. Like I've converted my entire family over to Chrome OS devices because there's only so many telephone calls you can take with like crazy things that happen. They get a virus here, virus there. I'd go to look at something and there'd be 10 toolbars on their screen and there's this much browser space at the bottom and it's like Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, okay, whatever.
Ask
this guy
Jeeves is a thing still.
Yeah.
Nice.
Still around. Jeeves is still kicking it, man.
Ask.com, like the 3/4 of the screen would be taken up by bars, by search bars. And I don't have that problem anymore because it's like I got everybody into Chrome OS and it just works. So from a non-techie perspective, I think that it's an awesome alternative to iPad. It's just that at that price point, I don't know how it's going to handle Android apps. I don't know. It's going to depend on what they do, like what Google does with it in the future.
For me, the direction that Android tablets have went, which is straight down the tubes, like it's never been a good experience comparatively to an iPad. So this direction makes a ton of sense. Is it accessible by people that would want to be in the market for that? Probably not, based on the price points we're talking about. So the idea is there. The implementation may be based on entry level pricing or how to get into that world isn't it making it super easy.
So one thing that's interesting, I mean, pulling up their website because I was trying to verify the pricing that Eddie was saying to make sure, which is it as I expected, correct. So so up on the top right of their webpage it says from $5.99 to or $24.96 a month for 24 months. So it looks like they're going to really start pushing their own equipment payment plans similar to wireless carriers. So that's a way to make that type of device accessible. It's the same way that now $1,000 phones are the standard because now it's accessible to everybody because you're paying for it in monthly installments. The credit checks against those are soft hits, for the most part. So who knows how Google's going to do theirs, but so that's how that's accessible.
That kind of makes sense. I didn't realize that they were doing payment options. So
it's something similar to Microsoft, and I can see them in the future going the Microsoft route where, like right now, when Microsoft introduced all the new Surface stuff, they have the same thing where it's zero interest payments, and then you get a Microsoft 365. They kind of pull you into the ecosystem. So I could see something similar with Google Drive where you get a terabyte of Google Drive storage for $25 a month with this device. So I could definitely see that. It's going to depend on where they go with Chrome next, as far if they're keeping those prices. If this is just like a reference device, like Nexus was, where hey, this is what a Chrome OS tablet could be, and then there's a slew of like HP and like you look at Chromebooks now, you can buy a $1,200 Chromebook Pixel. You can also buy a $179 HP Chromebook that can do the same stuff that it in real life isn't feel that much different other than the physical materials and the quality of your display. But if that kind of sparks a new battle in the tablet space where you've got sub $90 to $100 tablets now that don't have any of the problems that those tablets usually have, which are like software updates. You get a $150 tablet from Walmart. It may never get updated with software. You've got security holes everywhere because of out of date everything. So, and then ultimately it becomes a pain in the butt to use, and then it ends up in a drawer somewhere. Whereas a $150 Chromebook has the same level of sophisticated protection that a $1,200 one has. So you kind of cut that out of the mix. It's always up to date. Like there's not, I mean, they get updated forever. So I've got a 5-year-old or 4 or 5-year-old Chromebook that still gets regular updates. So
Mine
it may be
is
just to play.
one of those $150 ones. I've had it for 2 years, and it's just as fast as the first day we got it. You know.
So that's interesting there, where it's not so much that device that's going to change, that's going to battle Apple. It's going to be what comes next. As far as, $100, $150 devices that, like Brian said,
it's not the device,
just as quick.
It's the category it creates.
Right.
Yeah. I think that, and if we're going to expound on this or expand on it, the Chrome OS market or Chrome OS category is for probably the people that are doing everything besides like the professional type of tasks.
Yep.
I mean, if you're not editing video or things like that, then any Chromebook at this point is probably going to crunch through whatever you're doing, right?
Oh yeah. And they almost had me at the event because they brought up Adobe, and I was like, oh my gosh, here comes Photoshop. Like they were talking about the pencil, they were talking about Adobe, and they were like, and we partnered with Adobe. And I was like, here comes Photoshop. This is going to be the greatest moment in history. And then it was just that you can sign forms on PDFs on Acrobat.
Winner. But I mean, I used a Chromebook for years. It's been regifted within the family, and I think they're still using it. So it just had always ran well. I don't know if I saw it as necessarily an entry level type of thing, because you're working with web extensions instead of like downloading an app or a program offline or something like that. So it was a little bit more involved, I guess you would say. Now that they're running Android apps, it's a little bit of a different conversation because it's a web-based
Right.
operating system. But
if there's a light limitation on what kind of hardware you need to run their new streaming service, to stream like full-on games that would take a $4,000 PC to run, if that fits, like if those entry-level Chromebooks fit that requirement, then I think that will change the game significantly. Because at that point, you just need, a decent display and a headphone jack, and then you can play PC games in a way that you would only have access to with a machine that would be significantly more expensive. So if that's the play, then time will tell. But currently, I don't know. I mean, there's people like me that'll get one. For sure, just to have it, and because it really does look nice. Like the screen is very, very nice. And there you can hook that up to an external display, so you can get a 4K monitor and plug into it. I don't know about the $599 one, like how that's going to handle it. But some of the other models, like the I think it's $799 model and above, should at least be able to drive that display. I mean, it would be a computer you could take everywhere with you. My wife's parents have a Chrome all-in-one. They have tablets. They have everything. This would be like just one device solution where you had your tablet, and then when you took it to your desk, you sat down and plugged it in, and then the monitor popped up, and then you got on a keyboard and mouse. Looks like they might be onto something, but they have a history of doing this where Google's onto something, and then they just don't for whatever reason.
Do we know who the manufacturer is for these?
I don't. It said it's manufactured.
LG was doing the Pixel 2 for the most part.
By them. It's designed by Google, made in China, like Apple products are. So I'm sure it's Foxconn somewhere along those lines. But the internal components are a mystery, just other than the processors themselves. Intel is definitely the primary provider of the chipset. But that display is very unique. Not only the resolution, but just the pure quality and the brightness of said display is is very unique. So I don't know very many companies that, maybe Samsung, Sharp, could be LG, I guess. There's just a handful of those bigger names are capable of producing a display like that. So
fair enough. I think I just wanted to get your opinion on like where this is headed and who this is for, because it's like, okay, it's a tablet. It can have a keyboard. It's Chrome OS instead of Android. Pricey, but I mean, who's going to buy this? So
I think if they can put the puzzle pieces together, right? You know, they're working on streaming video games, which are some of the most resource intensive programs that you can run. And then they're going to start pairing that with hardware like this. Like, this is good hardware. If they can put their hands together, they're onto something, right? Just like Eddie said, if they can just do that and go all in and be like, you know what, we're going to set up a streaming video game service, and we're going to set up web-based Photoshop and Premiere and all that stuff. That's where they're going to be onto something. And that's where this price point would make a lot of sense for people.
It'll be able to handle those new extracurriculars.
Right. I don't need to drop. What were we looking at in one of the first episodes? $10,000 on an iMac to run Adobe Premiere software at a rate that isn't going to catch your laptop on fire, right? So now you can spend $600 and use a web-based service that will do all those things that you were used to on a $10,000 machine. You can buy a car for that amount.
Yeah. In its current state, I don't know who it's for other than a handful of people like myself that really would want it. But that doesn't say anything about the future. Like, if they're preparing to hit us with a slew of, web-based Photoshops and just productivity stuff that would be unthinkable on a machine of that cost, but because it's handled somewhere else, it flies through it, and the screen resolution, like, it makes it like a portable workstation, that will do the trick. Because then you're talking a steal. $1,200, $1,600.
From a business channel perspective, when you look at the types of solutions that Google provides to businesses, this is a steal for businesses, because they want iPads, they want stuff like that. And so you have right now, just like we were saying, you have two markets. You have iPads, which are starting at $600, $700, $800 for good ones, or you're going to get $150, $200 Samsung Tab E. Those are your choices in the market right now. Samsung's trying to make up that ground with their Tab S series, and it's not doing a good job. Maybe this is that niche. You have Google that has the software backing with G Suite, right? So, you can get companies to integrate into Drive, Gmail, Calendar, all those things. And now you're providing them with the hardware to do it, instead of having to rely on running it on an iPad, which is not a great experience, because I'm in that boat. Using G Suite on an iPhone doesn't work great. You can't integrate your contact list, all kinds of stuff doesn't work. But I can guarantee you that would work flawlessly on this device.
Right. And then you've got the longevity of the device also. These Chrome devices, in my experiences, have lasted much longer and been useful for a longer period of time than any device that runs an actual operating system that's in the closed operating system like iOS. Like, after a couple years, everything slows down except these Chrome devices. They just keep going. You tell that to a business.
Like, to answer Mark's question, people like Eddie are going to buy this. I'm probably going to buy one because I'm kind of in the market for a new tablet / computer / Chromebook. And then I think if they can do it right, you might see a lot of enterprises picking this up.
Makes sense. I didn't think about it in the business aspect for on-the-go type of applications. G Suite is a bigger deal in the business world than I think people give it credit for, especially when larger companies are moving their email services to Gmail and using Drive for it being accessible with multiple people. I mean, we use Keep It for our show notes. So, I mean, to be able to edit real time and see the changes, I mean, is super productive for people that aren't always in the same place at the same time to have meetings or to do these types of things.
Just think of a time where you needed to edit something with 4 other people before Drive, before a cloud-based service was out. What did you do? You took a document and you, by God, you emailed it back and forth 800 times. And that's how it worked. And then eventually, when you're ready to do this presentation, right, you get up there and Mark rolls out version 3. He's 3 versions behind. And you're like, Mark, that's not the most recent one. I made this change, you don't have that problem anymore with those services. So yeah, in an enterprise space, this is I could see this being a great sell in an enterprise space.
Productivity is the best word for that, I think. So if this is going to help productivity in an enterprise space, in a business space, or even Eddie with whatever productivity he's doing, besides like staring at the screen because it's pretty. I mean, it's productive. Yeah, it's a nice look. So there's more applications than I thought. I like to ask these questions and at least bring me over to. I mean, I've used Chrome OS, so I know the productivity, how productive it can be outside of pro type of tasks. So it makes it tough to do those things, but it'll do everything else, and it'll do it for 7 years without slowing down. So I get it. Is there anything else do you guys have from the event itself, the products you saw, anything you wished you saw, reactions or anything like that before we move on?
I want a not pink Pixel Slate. And I'll leave it at that. And I'll tell you.
And that's it. It's just blue.
Yeah, it's just blue. It is the name of that, just blue.
I think it's midnight blue, actually.
I just renamed it so I can take it.
Ruin your day.
Yeah.
Materials and color, midnight blue.
Thanks, appreciate it. My cares are minimal at this point.
It's also not pink.
It's not pink, but they need to put not pink in quotations, regardless. Anytime anybody says not pink in the real world, I need this. Otherwise, I think we're talking about the Pixel 3. So I'm going to throw this out here. I wanted to try this because I want us to be able to use the intellect of our guys here to help out the world, if you will. Maybe some comparisons of some of the flagships we have going on currently in certain categories to kind of get a feel for, okay, I think that the battery, the camera, the display are most important to me. So what device should I buy if I think that the camera is the most important thing? So I want to run through some of the differences between, we're going to look at the Galaxy Note 9, iPhone XS, iPhone XS Max, and then the Pixels, and then see what Brian and Eddie think about like ranking them per se, but also too, okay, who are these devices for in this category? So I started off with camera. This is tough because I feel like this is a super close type of category. So it makes it tough to kind of make a choice because a lot of these things are similar across the board. So if we're looking at a 12 megapixel camera on the Note 9, which is variable aperture, so it'll actually change the aperture manually, or you can change the aperture manually. What is it, Eddie? 1.8 to 2.4, 1.8 to 2.4, something like that. So you have that on the Note 9. You have dual 12 megapixel on the iPhone XS. I put bokeh in quotation marks because we have a drinking game for that.
Okay.
For those, yeah. And a 12 megapixel camera on the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3 XL, the wide angle on the front facing camera for your group selfies, and also all of the stuff we talked about earlier, including AI, to add the functionality to that. So if camera is your number one thing that you're looking for in a smartphone these days, which one of these devices should you go for? And is there a tie somewhere? What are you thinking about?
Pixel. 100%.
Why?
Because it's the only one of that entire group that doesn't rely solely on the lens. Well, you could argue that Apple is trying some things now with one of their like visual cores hardware, but Google had traditionally had poor camera performance in the past, and it's like they overcompensated for it now. But everything's software related, so like a lot of these cool camera features are going backwards to the older phones. Like you don't really see that in the other manufacturers. You don't, in order to get updated performance out of a Samsung or a iPhone camera, you have to buy a new Samsung or buy a new iPhone. This is, you know, Google is not relying on the hardware in the camera alone, and that camera improves performance simply based on software in addition to. So like that's the one of the few ones that you can purchase that you won't have to purchase a new device in order to take advantage of some of the newer features. Like whenever Apple next year launches a device and they say, hey, look at this, what our camera can do. Oh, you got a software update on your Pixel. Now yours can do it too. So
I 100% agree. Pixel 3, not the XL, just the 3 would be my choice out of those camera-wise. 1, price point. 2, literally everything Eddie just said. The software update is probably in the works for this phone to make the camera almost as good as the 3.
Yeah, they said it on stage. Yeah. It's all coming. All those features, like almost all of those features, are coming to the Pixel with an update. So
even some of the original Pixels, their OG Pixels, were getting some of that stuff. I'm like, what? The only thing that I saw different was the variable aperture camera to the Note 9, which was kind of cool. I think you can change a lot of that in software. Like you can change the bokeh post processing in the iPhones and the Note 9 too, but even in the Pixel now. So all of those, a lot of these features are shared among these cameras. So sometimes it's a tough decision, but I guess the end result here is, or the final say would be, the future proofing of that camera is why you would go with it. One, it's probably performing the best right now, but is going to continue to perform the best on the current device you have. Sounds about right. That's cool. So I guess the Pixel wins the camera scenario. The battery life sort of situation. You guys are in the world of getting some feedback on what the battery life is like on these things. 4,000 milliamp hour battery on the Note 9, a 2915 on the Pixel 3, a 3430 milliamp battery on the Pixel 3 XL. And we don't have milliamp hour numbers that I could find on the iPhone XS and XS Max.
I saw them somewhere, but the Note is the winner there. I mean, really anything with a 4,000 milliamp hour battery is going to be the winner. But the Note in real world testing just obliterated everything else. As far
we're talking like a day, with regular usage, a day and a half.
Yeah,
a few days.
But just trying to kill the battery. When every other phone died, there was still 39% left on the Note. So that's insane. But now the Pixel 3 XL and the regular Pixel have yet to be tested. But per what Google seems to be going for, Google is going for the efficiency when it's not in use, not when it's in use. So running these tests where you're actually just pounding away at the device, just doing tasks and playing games and web browsing, watching videos, like that stuff, there's no sipping power from. That stuff's just straight power draw. And in that case, the Note's probably going to win that one too.
I had a feeling.
Yeah. Note 9.
So Brian,
I think we probably read the same things.
So yeah, I kind of assumed that. I mean, Eddie's right. Anything with a 4,000 milliamp hour battery is going to win. The thing with me was I always assumed that you were breaking even with the size of those displays and the quality and resolution of that display. I kind of figured, oh, we're gonna break even. You put a big chunky battery in it, but it has a display that's an inch bigger than everything else, and it's a Quad HD display. So if it didn't have a Quad HD display, the thing would last for a week. It was nuts. So we have two Android winners so far. So if you're looking for a camera, best camera in-house, and on the Android side of things, it seems like the Pixel won out. Also in the battery performance, another Android device would win. We know what happens to Apple batteries whenever it comes to right around to September when the new ones show up. So, yeah. So displays, what we look at all of the time on our phones, the 100% basically almost driving the experience to a certain degree of how much we enjoy our devices. A 6.4-inch Super AMOLED display on the Note 9, 5.8-inch Super Retina, 6.5 Super Retina on the iPhone XS and XS Max, and you have a 5.5-inch and a 6.5-inch AMOLED on the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL. A lot of these displays are made by similar people. So is it I guess the beginning question is it a personal preference?
Yeah, to some extent. I think that from a short-term perspective, the Samsung, like the Note, is the best of the displays. From a long-term perspective, I'd have to go with the iPhone. Based on, I have seen iPhone 10s that have been nonstop running for a year, and there is not 1 ounce of burn-in anywhere. I cannot say the same about anything else. In fact, I still have yet to understand how that there are no iPhones.
Understand the magic behind that.
I don't understand, because the same company that makes that display makes their own displays, and they cannot stop burn-in from happening. I don't understand it. I don't know if it's just inherently an iOS thing where it's just not something in the software prevents it from happening, where there's a shift in pixels, or I don't know. But seeing an iPhone 10 display after a year with 0 burn-in is insanely impressive to me. But I believe that the Note to me looks the nicest of the group when I have it up front. But take that a year from now, and then when you're watching something on a white screen and you can see your burn-in in the background, then that changes. Like if you're going to trade your phones in every year, it's not going to matter. But from a long-term perspective, the iPhone 10 just blew me away as far as not burning in, but I still don't know how.
I'm impressed. I mean, coming from Android and from some pretty decently high resolution displays. I mean, my iPhone 10 has been, I mean, granted it's on half brightness, it's on 50%, but it's a crisp display. I mean, iOS isn't really built to be like, okay, this display is so amazing, because all you're looking at is icons. Like you're not really looking at anything crazy. And I'm on Eddie's boat where I'm finding the highest resolution wallpapers I can find to use. Like I try not to use like screenshots and stuff. I actually use like high resolution wallpapers. So it's been a nice experience. I mean, granted, like I said, you're really only looking at your icons that you can't move you can't take off and move and all this other stuff. So it's been a good experience. And I agree. Screen burn-in is a bigger deal than some think. If you want to keep your device for a longer amount of time than the 1-year annual upgrade option, and it's not an iPhone, that's probably something you're going to think about. Brian, your thoughts?
Note 9. I love Samsung's displays. I can't, and I know I spoke earlier about, the differences between the Pixel 2 XL and a Motorola and how the colors look more saturated on it. But I mean, when you're, sitting there watching the Avengers on your phone, I want that explosion to be more than lifelike. You know what I mean? And Samsung does a great job with that. Their TVs are awesome. Their phone displays are awesome. I don't crank my brightness up to 1,000,000 nits, so I don't worry about burn-in.
You have screen burn-in on your eyeballs. Eddie has screen burn-in on his eyeballs. So that's
right. Yeah, he has you can see the little, the circle in the back button on the bottom of his vision.
If I have to change all my walls to a different color, because when I hold my phone like this in front of me and I move, there's like the burn-in of my shape of my head on the wall behind me.
Oh man,
we have problems.
Note 9 wins that for me.
Yeah, I would agree. As far as just pure resolution, pure just enjoyment using it, it's tough to get past that quad HD display on a phone that's that big. It's tough to get the pixel density and the resolution on something like that as high quality as it is. So it's, I mean, not to knock it. I mean, Eddie spent 10 minutes talking about how the iPhone display is extremely impressive. So you're getting a good display in that too. Granted, we're getting a lot of the similar people making those displays. The experience. So this is 100% personal preference. Maybe it's 95% personal preference. So among these devices, you have 3 Android devices and 2 iOS devices. Both of you use Android devices. I think he's partial, obviously, to an Android device, but I think you understand the place for the iOS in this world, right?
Yep.
He doesn't want to even say anything else. The one thing that I will say, coming from Android to iOS, is I miss widgets. I was a big user of widgets of all types, of a calendar widget, a widget for like your flashlight on your device or other things. So I miss widgets being easily available and usable on my home screens, and even just putting my icons where I want them without having to have an entire page of icons, like little dumb stuff. Obviously, I think the biggest thing for me would be notifications and how they're handled. Notifications in iOS are still, although grouped, still kind of a hot mess. Android just does a ton better job of notifications and how you're going to receive them. So it's just an easier experience on the iOS. It's more of a, this is how you're going to use your phone type of experience, and it just tends to work. And I will say that what I've noticed is, because it's one set of hardware, it's one owned software and hardware scenario, there are applications that work better and developed more sturdily on iOS than there are on Android, because it's so fragmented on Android between devices and specifications between devices that it's hard to develop for those apps on that platform. So I understand that. My experience with those apps on an iOS device is better. That's just the nature of the beast from what we've talked about on prior episodes. But Apple versus Android is always a conversation. So if you, I'm not going to ask you your preference, because that's a dumb question, because we know your preference. But who's it today? Because the lines are skewed even further, because Android and iOS are more alike than dissimilar these days. Who's buying an iOS device and who's buying an Android device as a consumer? What people are buying the Android and what people are buying iOS?
They're buying what their friends have.
That's true.
Think about how you get recommendations for products anymore. You ask everybody, especially for phones. I still see it all the time on Facebook.
Because that's the point of this.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if you ask me, and I tell this to everybody, I give them what I call the lawyer answer. It depends. Usually if you want something that you're going to have for a long time that just works, and you're willing to pay a premium for it, go for iOS. That ecosystem is great. Everything just works and syncs together. If you're okay with some fragmentation, go for Android. If you want that customization piece, that's where you should go. I think Google as an ecosystem is starting to come together better than it has in the past. And like I said before, if they can take some of these puzzle pieces that they have and put them together, they're going to have something really great in terms of a full-blown smart home, portable workstation situation going on. Apple already pretty much has that. So
Edward.
For me, I would say that if you're app-driven iOS, I think the app experience on iOS is better. You know, Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram, and it's just iMessage. Like from an app perspective, I think that iOS takes the cake. From a everything else usability perspective, I think that Android just completely destroys Apple in that respect. Like the ability for it to understand when you're driving and what you're doing, and how to handle, you know, rerouting for directions whenever there's traffic, and to handle voice commands from separate people on different occasions. Like, it's just, they are creating something truly epic, not on your phone. Like, the actual Android experience, I think, is best whenever you're not actually interacting with the phone itself, when it's just doing things for you. This call screening thing comes up. Like, it's like the things that are coming, I think, from an overall perspective. Like, if you're not interested in, you know, making sure that you take the perfect Instagram picture and the perfect Snapchat and the perfect story and send it out. Like, I think that from a usability perspective, not application based, that Android takes the cake as far as being able to, you know, take a bunch of pictures on vacation and come home, and then you've got a movie in your mailbox that was built specifically for you. And now that movie goes to your Google Home Hub and your Chromecast, and it's just very personal, much more personal than iOS is. I think iOS is more of a social device, and the Google is more of a personal device. So
it's a very good answer. I was a little bit surprised by the impartial aspect of that.
I teared up a little bit. I think.
Yeah. I think Google cried a little bit because they were like, he said iOS in a good light.
Google was going to send a little Android to your house to hug you tonight, Eddie. That's what's going to happen.
He lost a small part of himself in that conversation. I mean, it is what it is. I agree with all aspects of that. There are reasons why people are with use the type of device they do. It's easier than ever these days to swap and to flip and to do different sort of things, unless you're on iOS and you have a MacBook and you're using text messaging on your device, your Apple Watch, your iPad, your continuity, those types of things, that ecosystem. What's cool is that based on some of the stuff that Brian said and Andy said, that ecosystem is starting to be built around Android devices. When you're talking about sharing information between them, I do miss it, I think, from my Android days to now my iOS days, the fact that the device tends to know me and what I need out of it based on the things that I do, the places I've been, and things like that. That sort of knowledge or that sort of assistance isn't something that you get from a colder experience on iOS. So depending on what's most important is where you're going to land on that, and whether you need to use iMessage, because that's the only thing that matters.
You and the iMessage.
Yes, you and the iMessage. The only thing left, which is interesting and is kind of a little bit more like a generalized sort of what's your priority thing, is design. Some very, very nice looking devices, some premium feeling, some materials that are used that some people are like, man, I'm not really a fan. So we're dealing with a ginormous Note 9 that is glass front and back, curved displays on each side. A iPhone XS and XS Max that are glass front and back, have a huge camera bump. If you don't have a case on it, which is insane, it's going to rock all over the place, and I don't know how you sit the thing down on the table. Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL are now glass. Granted, we spoke about it earlier. There's like a frosting on the back to where hopefully it's a little bit more grippy, but now a glass back as well as a glass front. Eddie's going to say he loves the Pixel 3 because that's what he's going to get. I've been a Note user. I now have an iPhone 10. An iPhone 10 is just an extremely nice looking device. The XS and XS Max are the same device. They're extremely premium looking, premium feeling. The Note is exactly the same to me. It's very premium feeling, premium looking. It's a big honking device. The Pixels, I think this year kind of moved into that realm with the glass involved. So holding the devices, if you haven't been in a store to see or anything like that, are going to be a more premium feel. So I think what the direction I'm going to take this is, if you want someone to see you out and about, you want someone to see you with a vertical camera, you want them to know that you have an iPhone, you're going to go that route. That's just kind of how that goes. Notes are known basically because they're ginormous and you can't fit them in your pocket. So they're all super premium devices. Some of it's all glass at this point. Some people hate the fact that we're really going to glass, but I like the idea of wireless charging. So that's a necessary evil for me. I don't think you can really go wrong with the design of any of these, though, minus maybe the curved infinity display of the Samsung, because other than that, they're all pretty similar, but also super premium. So anybody's thoughts on that?
I'm going to go Pixel 3 for the premium. As far as they did a better job this year. It feels more like it feels better than a Samsung does. Feels better than an iPhone does. And I think that hits the right spot with hardware. Like now there's one side of the device has nothing. It's just completely blank on one side. They moved the SIM tray around. Everything's been moved around. It feels better. The fingerprint's in the perfect spot.
That's a good point. Just not where this IO is placed.
It's thoughtfully done. Like it fits perfectly. I can't, for as much as I appreciate the other two, like the Samsung and the iPhone, how they feel in the hand, I can't say that it's the full package. Like Samsung, the display is beautiful, but it's not very functional. As far as if you're trying to type something or do something one-handed with one of those corners, it has the tendency to irritate. And even though they moved the fingerprint sensor, it's still not like the Pixel sensor is. And then from an iPhone perspective, it's just, I don't want to say confusing, but it's just not well thought out. I don't, the on-off button in the Siri sort of function where not quite sure how to turn your phone off, not quite sure if you're going to turn 911 on. You're not like, I see people and myself included all the time that I inadvertently do things because it's just it doesn't feel intuitive how I operate an iPhone anymore. So
I agree. I almost called 911 the other day, just trying to turn my phone off. It was a situation. I would agree. So, Red, any ideas?
I mean, honestly, I prefer the design of the iPhone, which is weird to say. I've always kind of liked their design philosophy and their mentality behind it. One of the first smartphone I had, besides a BlackBerry, which I don't even count those anymore. I had a Droid Incredible, and then I switched to an iPhone 4, and just the feel of the phone was different. It made you feel like you were using something that was vastly, vastly better than what you had before. And the material that they use, I think when you're looking at the home button thing, you're looking at functionality, but not not the physical design of the phone. The physical design of the iPhones is great. It's very appealing. They have a good weight in the hand too. They're a little slick, which I talked about before with the Pixel 2, kind of like a fish. But that is a fish. That's one thing that I think they've excelled in ever since they came out with the iPhone in general. It's always looked great. It's felt great in the hand. I can't fault them for that. Their notch, and I don't like notches. Their notch is okay. It's not as I think egregious is the 3XL, but you know that I guess over time you might get used to it. So who knows? That's up in the air. But yeah, I lean towards the 10 and the 10S Max.
I'll be honest. I had a friend of mine at a little golfing league that had a 10S Max and handed me the phone. I'm like, doesn't feel insanely larger than the 10 that I'm using now, and I'm getting a larger display, and it still feels premium. I haven't had my iPhone 10 outside of the case for more than like 10 minutes at a time because it freaks me out. And it's like has to be in bed because everything's soft. So like it's tough because all of these devices are premium. I think some people feel like the Pixel device's design is dated based on the fact of it looking similar to what they have looked like prior. But it feels different. Obviously, Eddie will attest to that. It feels different based on the back of the materials they're using on the back, and how it's going to feel with the frosting over the glass and things like that. But the iPhone has always been made to feel premium, like Brian said, with the materials they're using and just overall how you interact with it. The Samsung devices have been, after the Galaxy S5 and the Band-Aid back that it had, everything else after that has been super premium feeling, just high-end stuff. So depending on which operating system you end up in, you're going to have a super high quality device on iOS regardless, because they don't make anything that's not $1,000 or $800. But Android devices in the mid-range to high end are going to be super, super nice. So it just kind of depends on what suits your feel, because there's size options and there's material options in all of these. That went a ton better than I thought it would. Some answers I didn't expect, which was nice. So no chalk necessarily. Thanks for being comparative. I appreciate the open-mindedness there. The last thing, and this is something that I don't think the average person necessarily knows about or is in tune with, but something maybe we want to bring up because it's another option going on. There's a device out there that I think was talked about as the day after the Google event, something like that.
It was the same day. It was might have been the day after.
Maybe.
So this is kind of like a weird crossover between mobile and gaming. This is what I said earlier. You're putting your hands together. Right. So there's a company out there called Razer that's known for making high-end, high-quality gaming laptops, and they're awesome machines. I've gotten to play with them at PAX quite a bit. They look great. They have all kinds of lights everywhere, which is exactly what gamers want. They want things that are shiny and light up. That's how it works. So Razer last year came out with the Razer phone, and they have announced the Razer Phone 2 this year, which honestly sounds pretty amazing. The specs on it are similar to most of your high-end phones, so it's running a Snapdragon 845, 8 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of memory. The panel on it has a refresh rate of 120 hertz. So, I mean, they kind of went all in there. LCD 1440 by 2560, 12 megapixel shooter on the back, with a telephoto camera as well. It'll record in 4K, an 8 megapixel front facing camera, stereo front facing speakers. They use Dolby sound profiles in the phone, and a 4,000 milliamp battery. So, I mean, you're talking like high-end specs in a phone built by a laptop company, right? So this phone is centered 100% for mobile gaming. The chip they have a proprietary cooling system for the chip, and I want to say it's like a carbon-based heat sink that they built around it to disperse heat off of it. And then they included their own chroma lighting on it. So the Razer logo is like 3 snakes that form a triangle. And so that's on the back of the phone. And so they built in their lighting profile where you can make that pulse different colors or change colors and use it as a notification light. All around, it sounds like a really cool phone. It has wireless charging on it. It has a dock that also includes chroma in it, so it lights up different colors while it's charging. So they built a really high quality product, and they just sneak right in under the radar because they're such a niche product. It's designed for mobile gaming. So I thought it was pretty cool. And reading through that spec list, that's the same thing that you're seeing in a Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL, which is pretty interesting, but with a bigger battery.
Where's it coming in price point wise?
$799.
Okay.
Starts at $799. So same price as a Pixel 3, with a bigger battery. The camera, I mean, they
Not
use
buying that phone for the camera.
Yeah, right. So here's the thing. One thing that they did was they took feedback from the people that bought the first one. And a lot of the feedback was centered around the low quality of the cameras on it for doing things like streaming on Twitch. So they upped the aperture and put better cameras in it based on that feedback. Same with wireless charging. So they did put better cameras in. That 4K recording is super important if you want to stream anything. So, that because a lot of times you're streaming at events, right? So you're going to an esports game and you're going to stream that event and you want to be able to do it in 4K. This phone will let you do it.
So you're actually talking about streaming from the device,
right?
I think that's.
I think it's Sony that makes the lenses for that one. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, pretty neat product that, like I said, flew in right under the radar. The problem is they don't have a carrier partner that they sell through, so you're buying from them directly. They do financing options, but I think they only do 10-month or 12-month financing. So
what are they working? Do you know what carriers they work on?
Everything.
Okay.
Works on everything. The original one did not work with Verizon, which is not uncommon. For a lot of third-party phones, this one is compatible with Verizon since VZW is ditching its CDMA network in favor of LTE. So more things that weren't compatible before are now.
Right. I think we were seeing some of that with, and another option out there, which we don't talk a ton about, is the OnePlus devices.
Right.
That, are killing the market at like $500 to $600 and having top end specs. They run their own version of an Android-like knockoff, if you will, an Oxygen OS. There's other options. From what I understand, watching on a lot of online stuff on the first Razer phone, it came with fairly high reviews. Like it did well. Like a lot of people used it and
people that bought it really liked it. And so the second one, they took what they had done well on the first one, kept it, took the things that people didn't like and made them better. So the camera quality is better, hopefully. And, if you are using a lot for mobile gaming, that 120 hertz refresh rate is pretty beast.
That was the first time I saw that was on the iPad Pro, 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And just buttery situation, just sliding screen to screen was insane to see. It like made you feel like you were tripping out.
The only thing that's weird with this phone, right? Like
it's kind of chunky from what I see.
It's really boxy. It's really boxy looking. And that's from a company that their laptops and their peripherals are super sharp looking. And the phone is just like a brick.
I think that's based off of the next bit Robin.
It looks like it.
It was the next bit Robin, and whenever they started to go under, Razer purchased Nextbit and used their manufacturing process to create that. So I think that's why that's how it is.
I forgot about that phone.
This roundabout, though, they changed the speaker setup. So apparently these speakers are something else as far as loudness goes, just because they're not doing the screen to body ratio thing. There's two giant bars at the top and the bottom, and they are legit all speakers.
It's like a 5.7 inch display or something like that.
It's a bigger phone
for that size the honking bezels are like
Chunks,
insane.
yeah, but here those speakers are something else. Along with
Dolby 5.1 surround is what's in them.
along with the refresh rate, other than the refresh rate's supposed to crush the battery, so you have to, if you want reasonable battery life, you have to change it to 90 hertz. But there's no headphone jack, which is weird because I would have expected there to be something in a gaming device for streaming. But I mean, there's USB Type-C audio, and I guess you could put it on the charger while you played, on the wireless charger while you played, and that's probably where that heatsink's going to come in to play. But that's the only thing. The only weird omission I can think of is the headphone jack. I mean, for the pricing that they want for it, and for how cool it appears to be, I think that if it was on carrier partners, that it would be a force to be reckoned with as far as sales wise goes.
I think that it's not winning any awards for like feel in the hand or design necessarily, but functionality wise and what someone would purchase it for when you're talking about gaming or streaming or audio from the speakers itself, or just having pretty lights. Those types of things are top end type stuff. So those, and if you're buying a phone that needs to be pretty, I guess this one's not necessarily going to be the choice. I'll be honest. Me buying phones, feel in the hand is part of my decision making process.
That's the life of a gamer, though, as far as like their devices are typically huge. In some aspect, like you look at gaming laptops and like true gaming laptops that need like
because of the fans,
like an MSI, right? MSIs
so they're pretty. They're prettied up via like futuristic looking with LEDs everywhere and chromatic liquid cooling pipes that have colors. Like it's a different kind of pretty, and like those laptops don't feel good in the lap or anything. Their battery lasts like 48 minutes. Like there's no the gamers have a different set of expectations. They don't expect a certain look or feel. They expect high performance, and there's that that aspect of the chroma, which is just it adds a look to it that changes the how you observe that device. And I could see people hooking up controllers and stuff to it, and that's the comfort standpoint. They're not worried about comfort in the hand. They're worried about true performance, and they want to stream on it with a Bluetooth controller, and
boom,
it looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad Brian decided and brought it up to talk about it, because it got major, like from the people that the high end, top end YouTube guys or YouTube creators that had a Pixel 3 in their hand and the Pixel 3 XL. Literally the next day or hours later, were putting out videos for this Razer Phone 2. So it's got a space in the category. So
yeah, I mean, if they, like Eddie said, if they had a carrier partner, like that's an Android phone, that's top of the line specs across the board. That's bringing back the spec wars. We talked about it. Google didn't talk about what's in the Pixel 3. Didn't say what processor, RAM, nothing, because they're so focused on software. But for the people that are focused on hardware, there you go.
I think it runs like Nova Launcher or something like that. I think it comes in the box with
Nova Launcher Pro.
Yeah, and it's like $5 license to even do that. So they already have that on there for you. So and Android experience. That's kind of cool. I thought that was a nice thing that probably a lot of the average Joe wouldn't necessarily know what was going on with that, or what other options they had out there if they were gaming centric. So I like the ad there. Was there anything else Google event wise, Apple wise, that you guys saw that we can maybe throw in here before we go?
It's been pretty quiet outside of those.
Yeah,
nothing. No more blowing up MacBooks or anything either.
Nothing's melting right now.
Damn. No exciting news.
Yeah.
Speaking of meltdowns, Musk didn't have another meltdown. So
what are we going to do? We have nothing to talk about this week. That speaking of what have you been talking about? Eddie Daniels has his own YouTube channel that he goes over, does a lot of tech stuff, does a lot of Tesla stuff. What do you have anything in the works currently right now besides beating the clarinet player?
Just software 9 came out, version 9 came out, so I did a couple of videos on for Tesla. Brought some of the brand new user interface, like completely different look to the car. Bunch of bugs were found, so I did a bunch of videos on some neat little bugs that are actually useful. As far as like some could argue that the usability of the software has decreased in favor of simplicity. So, and folks who were used to their cars being more complicated miss that because they, like you were talking about widgets earlier. Imagine you woke up one day and then your widgets were all gone. And like
I did that when I bought an iPhone.
So you're thinking to yourself, well, I am used to things being a certain way and now they're not. But there's happens to be a few bugs in the software that allow you to kind of go back to that, which is interesting. So did some stuff on that. And of course I've got did some pixel videos. I'll have a bunch more coming up with camera comparisons. Got my hands on an iPhone XS to take pictures with. So I'm going to do a true comparison between cameras just to see if that night sight feature is truly all it's cracked up to be, or if there was some serious shade.
Some fibbing going on.
Yeah.
Lies and slander.
Yes. So you can find Eddie Daniels. There's going to be a clarinet player. He's more popular than this Eddie Daniels. Just keep looking past that. He's got some good stuff going on. Knows what he's talking about. So give him a look. Other than that, I wanted to try to get some extra different sort of segments out in this episode to try to help you guys and anybody that sees this about purchasing decisions. If there's other things that you guys want to see, Eddie is very tuned in to maybe having some access to some different sort of things. And his opinions obviously are quite valuable. Let us know you can do it. You can put a comment down there or whatever else would be. We have Twitter. What's our Twitter handle, Brian?
That would be tech4, as in the number 4, and then the word 3.
Okay. You can tweet us questions, concerns, stuff you want us to go over in another episode. That'll help me figure out the talk track for what we want to talk about. But other than that, I hope this was helpful. If things like this are something you'd rather see, you can leave a like. Like I said, you can leave a comment. Things that you guys want to see going forward. But until that time, I'd like you guys, Edward and Brian, to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Eddie.
That guy. We appreciate it, guys. Until the next episode, have a good night. Peace.